I am Olivia, 34 years old, and I just watched my brother-in-law throw my elderly parents' suitcase down a flight of concrete stairs like it was garbage. Before I tell you about the absolute legal and personal hell I rained down on him, and trust me, the look on his face when the tow truck lifted his rental Porsche was worth every penny of my medical school tuition, let me know where you guys are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel. It was supposed to be the best weekend of my life. Or more accurately, the best weekend of their lives. I'm a neurosurgeon. That sounds fancy, and honestly, the paycheck is good, but the reality is a lot less glamorous. It means living out of a locker, sleeping in 4-hour bursts, and subsisting on stale hospital coffee and protein bars. It means holding someone's brain in your hands, and knowing that a millimeter slip means they never wake up. It's high stress, high stakes, and it drains the life out of you. But I didn't do it for the prestige. I didn't do it for the title of doctor. I did it for Robert and Susan. My parents. My dad, Robert, worked 3 jobs when I was growing up. He was a janitor at the local high school during the day, delivered pizzas at night, and did landscaping on the weekends. My mom, Susan, took in sewing and cleaned houses until her hands were raw and her knuckles swelled with arthritis. They never took a vacation. They never bought new clothes. They wore their thrift store coats until the lining shredded, just so they could put every spare dollar into my college fund. They sacrificed their entire existence, so I wouldn't have to scrub floors or mow lawns. So when I finally made it, when the student loans were paid off and the real money started coming in, I had one goal. I wanted to give them the retirement they never thought they could have. I found it 2 months ago. A beautiful $425,000 seaside home. It wasn't a castle, but to us, it was a mansion. White deck, big windows facing the bay, and enough room for a garden. I bought it outright. Cash. I put it in a trust with them as the beneficiaries. I wanted them to wake up to the smell of salt air and coffee, not the sound of alarm clocks and debt collectors. I had given them the keys a week ago for their 50th anniversary. I had to stay back in the city for an emergency surgery, a temporal lobe resection that took 14 hours, so I told them to go ahead, settle in, and I'd join them on Friday night. That Friday, I drove down the coast with the windows down. The exhaustion from the surgery was fading, replaced by a warm, buzzing excitement. I had a bottle of expensive champagne in the passenger seat, and a cake from the best bakery in the city. I pictured my dad sitting on the porch, maybe reading a book, and my mom fussing over the new kitchen. But when I turned onto the quiet cul-de-sac where the house stood, my stomach dropped. It wasn't quiet. Bass. That was the first thing I heard. The thumping, rhythmic bass of loud electronic dance music vibrating through the air. It was coming from my house. I pulled my car closer, turning off my headlights instinctively. The driveway, which was meant for my dad's old reliable sedan, was occupied. Blocking the entire entrance was a sleek, black Porsche Cayenne. It was parked diagonally, aggressively, like it owned the pavement. Behind it were 2 other cars I didn't recognize, a BMW, and a flashy red convertible. My heart started hammering against my ribs, a different kind of rhythm than the music. This wasn't right. Dad didn't know anyone with a Porsche. Mom didn't listen to EDM. I parked my car down the street, near a neighbor's hedge, and walked toward the house. The front door, the beautiful mahogany door I had custom ordered, was wide open. Light spilled out onto the lawn. I could see shadows moving inside. People were laughing. Glasses were clinking. Then I saw them. My parents were standing at the top of the porch stairs. My dad, Robert, was clutching the railing. He looked smaller than I remembered. He was wearing his old gray cardigan, the one with the patch on the elbow. My mom was standing behind him, wiping her eyes with a tissue. And standing in front of them, holding a beer bottle, wearing a tight designer t-shirt that cost more than my dad's monthly pension, was Mark. My brother-in-law. Mark is married to my younger sister, Jessica. We'll get to Jessica in a minute. But Mark. Mark is a piece of work. He's 35, calls himself an entrepreneur, which is code for unemployed with grand ideas. He's the kind of guy who talks about crypto and NFTs at Thanksgiving while asking you to pass the gravy he didn't pay for. I stayed in the shadows of the large oak tree in the front yard. I needed to understand what was happening before I revealed myself. The surgeon in me took over, assessed the situation, gathered data, then cut. "Come on, Bob," Mark shouted. He wasn't even calling him Dad. His voice was slurred, loud enough to carry over the music. "You guys are killing the vibe. Look at this place. This is a party house. You two belong in I don't know, a library. A nursing home." My dad's voice was trembling, barely audible, but I heard it. "Mark, please. Olivia gave this to us. It's our anniversary. We just want to rest. Rest downstairs." Mark laughed, gesturing vaguely to the basement. "Or better yet, go to a motel. Jess and I have friends coming. Important friends. Investors. We can't have you shuffling around in your slippers looking like..." He waved his hand dismissively at them. "Looking like you do." My blood ran cold. It wasn't anger yet. It was something sharper. Then, Jessica walked out. My sister. The golden child. She was wearing a white dress, holding a glass of red wine, over the new cream-colored outdoor rug I had bought specifically because Mom loved the color. "Mark, babe, don't be so mean," Jessica said, but she wasn't looking at our parents. She was looking at her reflection in the sliding glass door, fixing her hair. "But Mom, seriously. The guys are going to be here soon. It's just for the weekend. We need the master bedroom. The light is better for my content." Content. She was talking about her Instagram. She wanted to kick our 70-year-old parents out of their anniversary bed so she could take selfies. We don't have anywhere else to go tonight, Jessica," my mom whispered. "We unpacked our things." "Unpacking is reversible," Mark sneered. And then he did it. The moment that changed everything. Mark reached down to the small, battered floral suitcase my parents had brought, the one they've used since their honeymoon in 1974. It was sitting by the door. "Let me help you speed this up," Mark said. He grabbed the handle. He didn't lift it gently. He swung it. "No," my dad cried out, reaching for it. Mark laughed and shoved the suitcase forward. I watched in slow motion as it tumbled down the 10 concrete steps of the front porch. Thud. Thud. Crack. It hit the bottom paver and burst open. My dad's folded shirts, my mom's medication, her reading glasses, they spilled out onto the dirty driveway next to the tire of the Porsche. "Oops," Mark said. He turned to the 3 or 4 friends who had gathered behind him in the living room. "Old people ruin the vibe, am I right?" His friends laughed. A cruel, sycophantic laughter. My mom let out a sob that tore through my chest. My dad started to walk down the stairs, his legs shaking so badly I thought he would fall. He knelt on the pavement, trying to gather his wife's underwear and his blood pressure pills, while disco lights flashed from the house above him. I stood there in the dark. My hands were balled into fists so tight my nails cut into my palms. I felt the familiar itch I get in the operating room when things go wrong, the intense, laser-focused clarity. I could have marched up there. I could have screamed. I could have thrown a punch. God knows I wanted to break Mark's nose. I know exactly how much pressure it takes to shatter the nasal cartilage. But screaming wouldn't fix this. Screaming is what helpless people do. I wasn't helpless. I was the owner of the house. I was the trustee. And I was done being the family doormat. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call the police. Not yet. I scrolled down to V. Victor. Victor is a locksmith I met 2 years ago. I performed emergency spinal surgery on his wife after a car accident. She walked out of the hospital when every other doctor said she'd be paralyzed. Victor told me that day, "Doc, anything you need, anytime, anywhere. You own me." He runs a 24-hour emergency locksmith and security service. He also has a brother who owns a towing company. I hit dial. Dr. Olivia. Victor's voice was rough, awake. "Victor," I said, my voice steady, cold as ice. "I need a favor. A big one. And I need it tonight." "Name it, document." "I need a complete lock change. High security. Biometric if you have it on the truck. And I need a tow truck. A flatbed. There's a Porsche blocking my driveway that needs to disappear." Victor didn't ask why. He didn't ask if I was sure. "Give me 20 minutes. I'm bringing the big drill." I hung up. I watched my dad trying to close the broken latch of the suitcase. Mark had gone back inside to pour another drink. Jessica was taking a selfie on the porch, angling the camera so our crying parents weren't in the frame. I stepped back into the shadows of the trees. I wasn't going to interrupt them yet. I was going to wait until the trap was set. They wanted a party. I was about to give them a show they would never forget. The 20 minutes I spent waiting for Victor were the longest of my life. I had retreated to my car, parked just out of sight around the bend of the road. I texted my dad, "Walk down to the street. Don't argue with them. Just come to the car. I'm here." A few minutes later, I saw them. Two silhouettes moving slowly under the streetlights. My dad was dragging the broken suitcase, one wheel wobbling and scraping against the asphalt. My mom was holding his arm for balance. They looked like refugees. They looked defeated. When I opened the car door and ushered them into the warm leather seats of my SUV, the smell of despair hit me. It's a specific scent: old fear, sweat, and resignation. "Olivia," Mom wept, clutching my hand as she sat in the passenger seat. "Oh, Olivia, don't go in there. Mark he's in a mood. We don't want to cause a scene." "A scene?" I repeated, my voice tight. "Mom, he threw your things down the stairs. He kicked you out of your house. He said they have investors coming," Dad mumbled from the back seat, staring out the window at the dark hedges. "He said it's a big opportunity for his startup. He said we were embarrassing him." "His startup," I scoffed. "The app for dog walking that has 0 users. Or the crypto scheme." I looked at them, really looked at them, and I felt a surge of anger that wasn't just directed at Mark and Jessica. It was directed at them, too. And at myself. Because this wasn't new. This was the pattern. This was the echo of entitlement that had rung through our family for decades. You see, Jessica is 2 years younger than me. When we were kids, she was the cute one. The bubbly one. I was the serious one. I was the one who studied until 2 a.m. Jessica was the one who snuck out to parties. And every time she got in trouble, my parents looked at me and said, "Olivia, fix it. You're the smart one. Help your sister." I remembered the first car I ever bought. I was 22, in my first year of med school. I had worked nights as a scribe to save up $4,000 for a used Honda Civic. It was ugly, dented, but it was mine. I needed it to get to my clinical rotations. 2 weeks after I bought it, Jessica called me crying. She had a date. She wanted to impress him. Her car, a beat-up Ford my parents had bought her, was too embarrassing. My mom had begged me. "Just for one night, Olivia. Let her take the Honda. It means so much to her self-esteem." I gave in. I always gave in. Jessica totaled the car that night. She was texting and driving. She walked away without a scratch. My car was a cube of metal. And what did my parents do? Did they make her pay me back? Did they yell at her? No. They hugged her and said, "Thank God you're safe." And when I asked about the money I had lost, money I needed for tuition, my dad looked at me with sad eyes and said, "Olivia, money is just paper. Family is everything. Don't make your sister feel worse than she already does." I ended up taking a bus to the hospital for 3 years. Jessica got a new car 6 months later, co-signed by my dad. That dynamic never stopped. It just got more expensive. When I became a resident, I paid for Jessica's rent because she couldn't find her passion. When I became an attending surgeon, I paid for her wedding to Mark because they were just starting out. I paid for my niece Mia's braces. I paid for the bail when Mark got arrested for a bar fight. I was the bank. I was the safety net. And they were the trapeze artists who never bothered to learn how to catch themselves because they knew I would always be there. But this seaside mansion. This wasn't just money. This was supposed to be the end of my role as the provider. This was me setting my parents up so they wouldn't need anyone. It was supposed to be their fortress. And seeing Mark desecrate it broke the spell. "He's driving a Porsche," I said quietly, looking at my parents. "Did you notice that?" "He said he bought it," Mom said, wiping her nose. "He said his investments paid off." "Mom," I said, turning on the interior light so she could see my face. "Mark doesn't have investments. He has debt. I checked the public records last week because he asked me for a loan of $5,000. He has 3 liens against him. That Porsche. It's a rental. A daily rental. He's paying $400 a day to pretend he's rich while kicking you out of a house he doesn't own." Dad's head snapped up. "A rental? He's a fraud, Dad. And he's using my house, your house, to play pretend with his friends." We sat in silence for a moment. The air in the car felt heavy, charged with the ozone of a coming storm. "What are you going to do?" Dad asked, his voice shaking. "Call the police." "No," I said. "Police take too long. And they might just call it a civil dispute and tell us to sort it out in court. That gives Mark months to squat in the house, destroy the furniture, and bleed me dry with legal fees. I know how tenancy laws work. If he stays there long enough to receive mail, it's a nightmare to get him out." I checked my watch. 18 minutes had passed. "I'm going to handle it surgically," I said. "Fast. Precise. And painful." Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Victor. Turning the corner. "Brothers are with me. We brought the flatbed." I looked in the rearview mirror. Twin amber lights reflected against the dark trees. The low rumble of a heavy-duty diesel engine cut through the night air, drowning out the faint thump of the bass from the house. "Stay in the car," I told my parents. "Lock the doors. Do not come out until I tell you." "Olivia," Mom grabbed my arm, her eyes wide with terror. He's aggressive when he drinks. Be careful." I patted her hand. My hand was steady. Surgical steady. "He thinks he's a lion, Mom. But he's just a house cat who wandered into a wolf's den." I stepped out of the car. The night air was salty and cold. The tow truck rolled past me, a massive, beautiful beast of chrome and steel. Victor was driving. He saw me and nodded, a sharp, grim dip of his chin. I walked behind the truck as it turned into the driveway. The headlights of the truck flooded the front lawn, illuminating the Porsche like a spotlight on a stage. The music inside the house stopped abruptly. The front door opened. Mark stumbled out, squinting into the blinding lights. Jessica was right behind him, holding a phone. "What the hell is this?" Mark screamed, shielding his eyes. "Who ordered a truck?" Get this thing off my driveway. I stepped out from behind the truck, walking right into the beam of light so they could see me clearly. I was wearing my scrubs still, dark blue, simple, authoritative. It's not your driveway, Mark, I said, my voice projecting clearly over the idling engine. And that's not your car. Mark froze. He blinked, trying to focus on me. Olivia? Hello, Mark, I said. Hello, Jessica. What are you doing here? Jessica screeched, her voice rising an octave. You said you were coming Friday. You're ruining the party. The party is over, I said calmly. I pointed to the Porsche. Victor, take it. Victor didn't hesitate. He shifted the truck into reverse. The relentless beep 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 of the truck backing up sounded like a countdown. Don't you touch that car. Mark roared, running down the steps. That's a $100,000 vehicle. I'll sue you. I'll kill you. He lunged toward the driver's side of the tow truck. I didn't flinch. Touch that truck, driver, I called out, and you'll be waking up in the ER before you go to jail for assault. Mark stopped. Not because of my threat, but because Victor's brother, a man who looked like he wrestled bears for fun, stepped off the passenger side of the truck holding a tire iron. He didn't raise it. He just held it. Vehicle is unauthorized on private property, Victor said, his voice gravelly and bored. Owner of the property requested removal. I'm the owner. Mark lied, his chest heaving. He turned to his friends who were now crowding the doorway, phones out, recording everything. Tell him. Tell him this is my house. I pulled a folded document from my scrub pocket. The deed. Actually, I said, holding it up so the friends filming could see. This is the deed. The trust belongs to Robert and Susan. I am the sole trustee with power of attorney. Mark here is a trespasser. I looked Mark dead in the eye. Hook it up, Victor. There is a specific sound a hook makes when it attaches to the undercarriage of a luxury car. It's a metallic clank that sounds final. Like a gavel hitting a desk. As Victor's brother slid the dolly wheels under the Porsche's rear tires, the scene on the front lawn devolved into absolute chaos. But it was a controlled chaos, one that I was conducting. Mark was vibrating with rage. His face had turned a mottled shade of crimson. The alcohol in his system was clashing with the adrenaline, making him erratic. He looked back at his friends, his investors hoping for backup. But here's the thing about people who hang out with guys like Mark, they are fair-weather friends. They saw the tow truck. They saw the deed in my hand. They saw the sheer size of Victor and his brother. And most importantly, they saw the illusion of Mark's wealth shattering in real time. Bro, one of the guys in a shiny blazer said, lowering his phone but keeping it recording. You said you owned this place free and clear. You said your crypto wallet bought this. I do. I did. Mark spluttered, sweat beading on his forehead. She's lying. She's my wife's sister, she's crazy. She's just jealous because I made it big and she's just a worker. A worker? I laughed. It was a cold, sharp sound. I'm a neurosurgeon, Mark. And yes, I work. That's how I bought this house. Unlike you, who rented a Porsche for $399 a day from exotic rentals downtown, I saw the sticker on the bumper before you ripped it off. The crowd on the porch gasped. A girl in a sequined dress covered her mouth, suppressing a giggle. It's a lease. Mark lied, his voice cracking. Up it goes, Victor shouted. The hydraulics whined, and the front of the black Porsche tilted toward the sky. The car alarm began to blare, a rhythmic, piercing siren that harmonized with Mark's panic. Jessica finally snapped out of her shock and rushed down the stairs to confront me. She got right in my face, smelling of expensive perfume and cheap wine. Olivia, stop this right now, she hissed, grabbing my arm. Her nails dug into my skin. You are humiliating him. Do you have any idea how important these people are? If he loses face in front of them, his deal is dead. I looked down at her hand on my arm. Let go of me, Jessica. Send the truck away, she demanded, stomping her foot like she was 5 years old. You can't do this to family. We just wanted one weekend to show off. Why do you always have to be so selfish? You have everything. You have the money, the job, the house. Can't you let Mark have one win? A win. I pulled my arm free with a sharp jerk. He threw Dad's suitcase down the stairs, Jessica. He called Mom useless. He kicked them out into the cold. Is that what a win looks like to you? They were ruining the aesthetic, she shouted, and then immediately clamped her hand over her mouth. Silence fell over the driveway. Even the car alarm seemed to pause for a breath. The friends on the porch went dead silent. The aesthetic, I repeated. Mom and Dad, the people who paid for your clothes, your food, your mistakes, they ruined your aesthetic. I turned to the group on the porch. You all heard that? You're recording, right? Yeah, we got it, the guy in the blazer said, sounding disgusted. He turned to Mark. Dude, you kicked your own in-laws out. That's low. Even for you. No, she's twisting it. Mark yelled, running toward the group. Guys, wait. The champagne is still cold. Come back inside. Don't listen to her. But the spell was broken. The investors were already starting to shuffle toward their own cars, the BMW, and the convertible I had seen earlier. They didn't want to be part of a domestic dispute involving police and tow trucks. It wasn't cool. It wasn't vibe. We're gonna head out, Mark, the girl in sequins said. Thanks for the weird night. Wait. Don't go. Mark pleaded, grabbing the guy's sleeve. The guy shook him off. As Mark's audience disintegrated, his rage turned back to the only target left, me. The Porsche was now fully loaded onto the flatbed. Victor was securing the chains. Mark turned to me, his eyes wild. He looked at the empty driveway where his status symbol used to be. He looked at his fleeing friends. He looked at Jessica, who was sobbing dry, angry tears. You think you're so smart, Mark spat, stepping into my personal space. He poked a finger hard into my shoulder. You think waving a piece of paper makes you the boss. You're just a lonely, bitter spinster who throws money around to make people like her. But guess what? Nobody likes you, Olivia. Your parents only tolerate you because you pay the bills. Jessica hates you. And I. He leaned in, his breath hot and sour. I'm not leaving. This is a civil matter. I have established residency. My bags are in there. I've been here for 48 hours. In this state, that makes me a tenant. You can't kick me out without an eviction notice. That takes 30 days. Go ahead, call the cops. They'll tell you the same thing. He was bluffing about the law, mostly. But he knew just enough to be dangerous. Squatters' rights are a nightmare. If he could convince a police officer he lived there, I would be stuck in a legal battle for months. Get inside, Jess, Mark ordered, grabbing her arm. We're locking the doors. If she tries to come in, we call 911 and say she's breaking and entering. Let's see how the medical board likes their star surgeon getting arrested for home invasion. Jessica looked at me, then at Mark. For a second, I thought she might do the right thing. I thought she might remember the sister who bought her ice cream when she scraped her knee. But she didn't. She sneered at me. You shouldn't have come, Olivia. They turned and ran up the stairs. They slammed the heavy mahogany front door. I heard the deadbolt slide home. Thunk. Then the secondary lock. Click. I stood alone on the driveway. The tow truck engine rumbled. Victor walked up to me, wiping grease on a rag. He's right about one thing, Doc, Victor said quietly. If the cops come and he claims he lives here, they might not toss him out tonight. They hate getting involved in family property disputes. They usually say take it to court and walk away. I looked at the house. My house. My parents' sanctuary. Now a fortress occupied by two parasites. I looked back at my SUV. I could see my parents' silhouettes in the window, watching me. Waiting for me to fix it. Just like always. But this time, I wasn't going to fix it by writing a check. I wasn't going to fix it by negotiating. Victor, I said, reaching into my pocket and pulling out my phone again. Do you have the heavy-duty drill? Victor grinned. It was a terrifying, beautiful sight. I got the diamond-tipped bit. Cuts through reinforced steel like butter. Good, I said. But first, I need to make one phone call. I need to make sure that when we open that door, Mark doesn't have a legal leg to stand on. I scrolled through my contacts to Sterling, Arthur, attorney at law. It was 10 p.m. on a Friday. Sterling charges $800 an hour. He picks up on the second ring for me. Olivia, his voice was smooth, cultured, contrasting sharply with the chaotic scene around me. To what do I owe the pleasure of a late-night call? Please tell me you haven't been arrested. Not yet, Arthur, I said. But I need you to explain the concept of hostile trespass via fraud to a police dispatcher if I need to call one. And I need you to verify the commercial use clause in the trust document we drafted. Ah, Sterling said. I could hear him shifting in his leather chair. Did the brother-in-law try to Airbnb the property? Worse, I said. He's trying to commandeer it as a headquarters for a fake business event. He's claiming tenancy. If he used the property for commercial gain without the trustees' consent, he invalidates any guest privilege immediately, Sterling recited. It becomes criminal trespassing, not civil. Especially if there is damage to property. Is there damage? I looked at the scratches on the driveway from the suitcase. I thought about the red wine on the rug. Yes, I said. There is malicious destruction of property. Then you have probable cause to remove him by force if necessary to protect the asset, Sterling said. Do you have security personnel? I looked at Victor, who was currently attaching a massive drill bit to a power tool that looked like a machine gun. Yes, I said. I have security. Proceed, Sterling said. I'll stay on the line. I put the phone in my pocket. I nodded to Victor. Let's go take my house back. The walk from the driveway to the front porch felt like a military advance. The tow truck had already departed with the Porsche, its amber lights fading into the distance. Now, it was just the silence of the night, broken by the distant sound of the ocean, and the heavy tread of Victor's boots on the pavement. The house was dark now. Mark had turned off the porch lights, probably thinking the darkness would deter us. Or maybe he was hiding, peeking through the blinds, thinking he had won the stalemate. I walked up the stairs, avoiding the spot where my dad's suitcase had landed. I stood in front of the massive mahogany door. It was solid wood, expensive, designed to keep storms out. Now it was keeping me out. Mark. I called out. I didn't yell. I projected. Open the door. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises. Silence. Then, a muffled voice from the other side. Go away, Olivia. I'm calling the cops. Mark shouted. I have a lease. Verbal contract. You have nothing, I replied. And I have your lawyer on speakerphone, well, my lawyer, who is about to become your nightmare. I motioned for Victor to wait. I wanted to give them one last chance. Not for their sake but for mine. I wanted to be able to tell my parents I tried everything before I went nuclear. Jessica, I said, pitching my voice toward the living room window. I know you're in there. Listen to me. If Victor has to drill this lock, I am billing you for the door. That's $4,000. Plus the locksmith fees. Plus the cleaning fees. If you open it now, you can leave with your dignity. You don't care about my dignity. Jessica screamed back. You just want to control everything. You're jealous because I'm happy and married and you're alone with your money. That stung. It was a childish insult, but it landed. She knew my weak spots. She knew I worried that my ambition had cost me a personal life. But then I looked back at my car. I couldn't see them clearly, but I knew my parents were huddled in the back seat of that SUV. Cold. Frightened. Humiliated by the daughter they had coddled. I wasn't alone. I was the guardian. Okay, I said to the door. Time's up. I nodded to Victor. Do it. Victor stepped forward. He didn't use a lockpick. He didn't use a tension wrench. He lifted the heavy-duty industrial drill. Stand back, Doc, he rumbled. This is gonna get loud. The sound of the drill biting into the metal deadbolt was excruciating. It was a high-pitched shriek of metal on metal that tore through the quiet neighborhood. Sparks flew, illuminating Victor's focused face in jagged flashes. Inside, I heard screaming. She's breaking in. She's actually doing it. Jessica yelled. Get the gun, Mark. Get the bat. Mark shouted. My heart leaped into my throat. Gun? I didn't think Mark owned a gun. But with him, who knew? Victor, careful, I warned. Don't worry, Victor grunted, leaning his weight into the drill. Almost through. With a final, sickening crunch, the locking mechanism shattered. The deadbolt, drilled through its core, lost its grip. Victor pulled the drill back. Smoke curled from the hole in the door. He lifted his heavy boot and kicked the door right below the handle. Boom. The door flew open, banging against the interior wall. I stepped in first. The living room was a mess. Pizza boxes, beer bottles, and throw pillows were scattered everywhere. The expensive white rug was indeed stained with wine. Mark was standing by the fireplace, holding a heavy brass candlestick, one of my mother's heirlooms. He looked terrified, shaking, trying to look tough but failing miserably. Jessica was cowering on the sofa, clutching a cushion. There was no gun. Just a coward with a candlestick. Get out. Mark screamed, waving the brass object. I'll bash your head in. Self-defense. Victor stepped in behind me. He crossed his massive arms. He didn't look like a locksmith anymore. He looked like an executioner. Drop the weapon, son, Victor said. His voice was low, vibrating with a threat that didn't need to be shouted. Or I will make you eat it. Mark hesitated. He looked at Victor, then at me. This is illegal. Mark cried, tears actually starting to form in his eyes. You can't just break in. I didn't break in, I said, stepping over a pizza box. I entered my own property. You changed the locks without permission. I just corrected the error. I pulled out my phone again. Now here is what is going to happen. You are going to put down that candlestick. You are going to pick up your bags. And you are going to walk out that door. If you don't, I'm going to play a video for you. What video? Jessica asked, peering over the cushion. The video from the Ring doorbell camera, I said. The one I installed last week. The one that recorded Mark throwing an elderly man's suitcase down a flight of stairs. The one that recorded him threatening me. And the one that recorded him admitting the Porsche was a rental. Mark's face went pale. You recorded that? Cloud storage, I said. And here's the kicker. I already forwarded the clip of the suitcase throw to your boss at that startup you're consulting for. I figured they should know about the character of the man representing their brand. Oh, and I sent the clip of the Porsche being towed to the rental agency. I think voiding the rental agreement usually comes with a hefty fine. Mark dropped the candlestick. It hit the floor with a heavy thud, denting the hardwood. You ruined me, he whispered. I'm up for a promotion. They'll fire me. You ruined yourself, I said. I just turned on the lights. I pointed to the door. Go. Now. Before I decide to press charges for elder abuse. And believe me, with that video, a jury would love to send you away. Jessica stood up. She looked at Mark, then at me. She didn't look angry anymore. She looked small. Olivia, she whined. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have a car. You towed it. Uber exists, I said. I suggest you order one. You have 3 minutes before Victor throws you out physically. Mark looked at Victor. Victor cracked his knuckles. It was a cliché move but effective. Mark grabbed his duffel bag. He didn't look at Jessica. He walked past me, head down, defeated. Jessica lingered. She looked at the room, at the party that ended in disaster. I hate you, she whispered to me as she passed. You think you're better than everyone. No, Jess, I said softly. I just pay for my own mistakes. It's time you started paying for yours. She stormed out. I followed them to the porch. I watched as they walked down the driveway, the same walk of shame my parents had done an hour ago. They stood on the curb, arguing, staring at their phones, waiting for a ride. Clear, Victor said from the doorway. Do you want me to install the new deadbolt now? Yes, please, I said. And Victor? Change the code. Make it something only my dad would know. Maybe his wedding anniversary. You got it, document. I walked down the stairs to my car. I opened the back door. My parents were sitting there, holding hands, eyes wide. Is it over? Dad asked. It's over, I said. They're gone. The house is yours again. Mom burst into tears. But this time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Come on, I said, offering my hand. Let's go home. The walk back up to the house with my parents was slow. My father leaned heavily on my arm, his physical exhaustion matching his emotional drain. Every step seemed to take an effort, but with every step closer to the porch, I felt his grip on my arm tighten, not in fear, but in reclaiming his ground. Mark and Jessica were still at the curb, illuminated by the street lamp. Their Uber hadn't arrived yet. They went silent as we approached. Mark couldn't even look at my father. He stared at his shoes, kicking at a loose pebble. Jessica turned her back to us, arms crossed, shivering in the night air in her thin party dress. I stopped at the bottom of the stairs. I wanted this moment to register. Mark, I said. He flinched. He looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and full of hate. My father has something to say to you, I lied. I hadn't discussed this with Dad, but I felt him straightening up beside me. I knew my father. He was a gentleman, but he was a man of dignity. Dad let go of my arm. He took a breath. He looked at the son-in-law who had thrown his life's belongings into the dirt. I worked 40 years, Dad said. His voice was raspy, but it didn't shake. I scrubbed toilets. I dug ditches. I served people who looked down on me every single day. But I never treated a human being the way you treated us tonight. Mark opened his mouth to speak, maybe to offer a half-hearted excuse, but Dad cut him off. You are not welcome in this house, Dad said. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not until you learn what it means to be a man. A man protects his family. He doesn't throw them down the stairs. Silence stretched out between them. The wind rustled the palm trees. And Jessica, Mom said. Her voice was softer, but it cut deeper. Jessica turned around, tears streaming down her face. Mom, You watched, Mom said. You stood there and you watched him do it. You watched him humiliate your father. And you worried about your wine glass. Mom shook her head. I love you, honey. I always will. But I don't like you very much right now. It was the most devastating thing I had ever heard my mother say. We turned our backs on them and walked up the stairs. Victor was just finishing the installation. The smell of drilled metal still hung in the air, but the new lock, a sleek, brushed nickel keypad with a biometric scanner, was already in place. All set, Mr. Robert, Victor said, stepping aside respectfully. He wiped his hands on his pants. Doc said to make the code your anniversary. 0-6-1-5, is that right? Dad nodded. He reached out with a trembling hand and pressed the numbers. Beep. 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 The lock engaged with a solid, mechanical thunk. The light turned green. Dad pushed the door open. We walked inside. The contrast between the victory on the porch and the reality of the living room was jarring. The house smelled of stale beer, heavy perfume, and that distinct, greasy scent of pepperoni pizza. The sight of the mess broke my heart all over again. This was supposed to be pristine. It was supposed to be their sanctuary. Now it looked like a frat house after a bender. I'm sorry, I said, looking at the wine stain on the rug. I'm so sorry, Mom. I wanted this to be perfect. Mom looked around. She saw the dent in the floor from the candlestick. She saw the empty bottles on her kitchen island. She walked over to the coffee table, picked up an empty beer bottle, and dropped it into the trash can. Clink. It's just a house, Olivia, she said, turning to me. Walls and floors. We can clean it. What matters is that we are here. And they are not. She was right, of course. But the anger inside me hadn't fully dissipated. I felt the need to scrub this place. To exorcise the entitlement from the very fibers of the carpet. I'll help you clean, I said, rolling up my scrub sleeves. No, Dad said. He was standing by the window, watching the street. They're leaving. I walked over to join him. Down below, a gray sedan had pulled up. Mark threw his bag into the trunk with unnecessary force. Jessica got in the back seat. They didn't look up at the house. The car drove away, disappearing into the night. Good riddance, I whispered. Dad turned to me. He took my face in his rough, calloused hands. Thank you, Olivia. For the house. But mostly for standing up. I think I forgot how to do that for a while. You did good, Dad, I said, fighting back tears. Victor, I called out. Come in. Have a beer. A fresh one, not one of theirs. Victor stood in the doorway, looking uncomfortable. No thanks, document. I got the truck running. Gotta get back to the shop. Send me the bill, I said. Triple the night rate. And add a hazard pay bonus for the candlestick incident. Victor chuckled. Standard rate is fine, document. You saved my wife. We're square. He tipped an imaginary hat to my parents. Enjoy the house, folks. Nobody's getting through that door unless you want them to. He left, pulling the door shut behind him. The sound of the new lock clicking into place automatically was the most beautiful sound I had heard all night. Click. Safe. We were alone. Finally. But as I looked at the wreckage of the party, I knew the real work was just beginning. The physical mess was easy. The emotional mess. That was going to take a lot longer to clean up. For the next 2 hours, the three of us moved in a silent rhythm. It was 11:30 p.m., and we should have been sleeping, but none of us could rest in the chaos. I tackled the kitchen. I threw away half-eaten pizzas, drained half-empty bottles of craft beer down the sink, and wiped down the sticky granite countertops. Every wipe felt like I was erasing a smudge of Mark's presence. Mom worked on the living room. She got on her hands and knees with a bottle of club soda and a towel, dabbing at the wine stain on the rug. She scrubbed with a ferocity I hadn't seen in years. It wasn't just a stain to her, it was a symbol of Jessica's disrespect. Dad went to the garage and found the broom. He swept the porch, clearing away the dirt from the suitcase and the cigarette butts Mark's friends had flicked into the flower pots. By 1 a.m., the house looked like a home again. Not perfect, the rug still had a faint pink shadow, and the floor had a dent, but it was clean. It smelled like lemon pledge and sea air, not stale alcohol. We sat on the deck, exhausted. I made tea, chamomile, hot and strong. We sat in the dark, listening to the waves crashing against the shore below. The adrenaline had worn off, leaving a deep, aching tiredness in my bones. So, Dad said, blowing on his tea. What happens now? With Jessica? It was the question we were all avoiding. I don't know, I admitted. Legally, she can't come back here. The trust is clear. I can enforce a restraining order if I have to. But she's your daughter. Mom sighed. A sound that seemed to carry the weight of 30 years of parenting mistakes. We ruined her, didn't we? I looked at Mom. You didn't ruin her. You loved her. We enabled her, Dad corrected. His voice was firm. We let her get away with everything because we thought. I don't know. We thought we were helping. We thought if we cushioned the fall, she wouldn't break. But we just taught her that gravity doesn't apply to her. He took a sip of tea. That stops. Today. I looked at him, surprised. What do you mean? The phone plan, Dad said. We pay her bill. The car insurance. We pay that too. Even her Netflix account. He looked at me. I know you send them money, Olivia. I see the transfers. I looked down at my tea. I just wanted to keep the peace. There is no peace, Dad said. Only ransom. We've been paying ransom for her love for years. And look where it got us. Thrown down the stairs. He set his mug down on the table. Tomorrow, I'm going to the bank. I'm removing my name from her loans. I'm canceling the auto payments. And Olivia. I want you to promise me something. Anything, Dad. Stop being the wallet, he said. You've done enough. You bought us this house. That is more than any child should do. Do not give Jessica or Mark another cent. Not for rent, not for bail, not for a medical emergency, unless you see the X-ray yourself. I nodded slowly. It felt terrifying, honestly. Saying no to family is harder than brain surgery. In surgery, the rules are clear. In family, the lines are blurry. But tonight, the lines had been drawn in permanent marker. I promise, I said. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a notification from my bank app. A request for $200 from Jessica via Venmo. The note said, Uber to hotel. Cards declined. Need help ASAP. I stared at the screen. The old Olivia would have paid it. I would have thought, it's late, they're stranded, I can't leave them on the street. But then I looked at the bruise forming on my dad's arm where Mark had grabbed him. I looked at my mom's red, swollen eyes. I picked up the phone. I didn't decline the request. I blocked the user. Who was it? Mom asked. Nobody, I said, putting the phone face down. Just a scammer. We sat there for a while longer, watching the moon reflect on the water. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. It was the silence of a fortress that had withstood a siege and remained standing. You know, Dad said, leaning back in his chair. I always hated that suitcase anyway. Maybe I'll buy a new one. Something with wheels that actually work. Mom laughed. A real, genuine laugh. Maybe red. Something bright. Red is good, I smiled. I looked at them, my parents, finally safe, finally understanding that they deserved to be treated with respect. I realized that the house wasn't the gift. The house was just the venue. The real gift was the backbone. The real gift was the no. And as I sat there smelling the salt air, I knew that for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just the doctor, or the provider, or the fixer. I was just the daughter. And that was enough. The silence that followed that night was heavy, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that comes after a fever breaks. For the first week, I expected the other shoe to drop. I expected Mark to show up with a baseball bat, or Jessica to stage a sit-in on the front lawn. I even alerted the local police precinct, giving them a heads up about a potential domestic disturbance, just in case. But the physical retaliation never came. Instead, the war moved to a different battlefield, the internet. 3 days after I changed the locks, my cousin sent me a screenshot. Jessica had taken to Facebook. She posted a long, rambling status update, white text on a black background, the universal signal for I am the victim. It's funny how money changes people, she wrote. Some people think buying a house gives them the right to control everyone else. Family should be about love, not eviction. Heartbroken that my own sister would choose property over people. #toxic family #narcissist. Under normal circumstances, seeing my own sister call me a narcissist publicly would have sent me into a spiral of guilt. I would have called her. I would have apologized for overreacting. I would have offered to pay for a hotel just to smooth things over. But then I looked at the coffee table in my living room, my real living room in the city, where the invoice from Victor sat. Emergency lockout service, $450. Door repair, $3,200. Security system upgrade, $1,500. I didn't reply to the post. I didn't engage in the comments section where our distant aunts were posting sad face emojis. I did something better. I acted like a lawyer. I compiled a folder. In it was the invoice for the door marked damaged. The invoice for the professional cleaning of the rug. The towing fee for the unauthorized Porsche. And most importantly, the invoice for the unauthorized occupancy and emotional distress, calculated based on the daily rate of a luxury seaside rental. I sent it via certified mail to their apartment. A week later, the real fallout began. And honestly, it was more satisfying than any comment section war could ever be. It started with Mark. Remember the video clips I mentioned? The ones from the Ring camera. I wasn't the only one recording that night. Those friends of his, the investors he was trying to impress, had been live streaming parts of the evening. One of them had captured the moment the tow truck lifted the Porsche into the air while Mark screamed about suing everyone. The caption read, "When you flex a rental and get repoed at your own party. #fake rich #Porsche fail." The video went viral in our local community. It didn't get millions of views, but it got enough. It circulated through the local business groups. It landed in the inbox of the startup incubator where Mark was consulting. I found out through the grapevine that Mark was let go the following Tuesday. Apparently, companies don't like their brand associated with men who throw elderly people's luggage downstairs and lie about asset ownership. Then came the rental agency. I had sent them the footage of the car blocking the driveway to justify the tow, but they noticed something else in the video. They noticed Mark leaning against the hood with his studded jeans, scratching the paint, and the way the car had been parked partially on the grass, damaging the undercarriage. They hit him with a damage fee that wiped out his joint savings account with Jessica. But the biggest change didn't happen to Mark or Jessica. It happened to my dad. For 30 years, Robert had been the softest man I knew. He was the buffer, the peacemaker. He was the one who would slip Jessica a $20 bill even after she cursed him out. 2 weeks after the incident, Dad called me. "Olivia," he said. "Are you free for lunch? I'm coming into the city." I met him at a diner near the hospital. He looked different. He was wearing a new shirt, crisp, clean, not from a thrift store. And he was holding a folder. "I went to the bank today," he said, after we ordered coffee. My stomach tightened. "Did Jessica ask for money?" "Dad, you promised." "I didn't go to give money," he interrupted. He opened the folder. Inside were bank statements, printed emails, and canceled checks. "I sat down with a banker," he said. "I removed my name from Jessica's car loan. It turns out she's missed 3 payments. The bank was about to come after my pension. I told them I am no longer a cosigner. I showed them the paperwork proving I have no access to the vehicle." He flipped a page. "Then I went to the phone company. I separated the lines. Jessica and Mark are on their own plan now. If they don't pay, their phones get cut off. Not mine." He looked up at me, his eyes clear and steady. "And I changed my will." I choked on my coffee. "Dad, you didn't have to." "I did," he said. "Before, the house was going to be split 50-50ths between you and Jessica after we passed. But I realized something. If she gets half that house, she'll force you to sell it. She'll cash out and blow the money in a year. And you'll lose the sanctuary you built." He tapped the paper. "The house goes to you. 100%. Jessica gets a small cash stipend, provided she is clean and employed. If not, it goes to charity." I reached across the table and took his hand. It was trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of finally cutting the cord. "Was it hard?" I asked. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done," he admitted, his voice cracking. "She's my baby girl, Olivia. Part of me wanted to call her and say I'm sorry, I'll fix it. I wanted to be the hero." He looked out the window. But then I remembered the sound of that suitcase hitting the concrete. Thud. Thud. Crack. And I realized if I keep saving her, I'm the one throwing the suitcase. I'm the one hurting her by not letting her grow up. "I'm proud of you, Dad," I said. And I meant it more than anything I'd ever said. "There's one more thing," he said, a shy smile appearing on his face. "I joined a class." "A class?" I asked. "Like pottery? Gardening? Krav Maga," he said. I stared at him. "Self-defense?" "Dad, you're 70. The instructor says I have a low center of gravity," he chuckled. "I'm tired of feeling helpless, Olivia. When Mark grabbed my arm that night, I felt like a piece of paper. I never want to feel like that again. Next time someone tries to push me, I want to know how to stand my ground." We finished our coffee, and for the first time in years, I didn't reach for the check immediately. Dad put his card down. "My treat," he said. "I have a little extra money this month. Turns out, not paying for Jessica's mistakes saves a lot of cash." The weeks turned into a month. The silence from Jessica became permanent. I didn't block her number, but I didn't answer her calls. She left voicemails, first angry, then crying, then bargaining. "Olivia, we're going to lose the apartment. Olivia, Mark is depressed. Olivia, how can you do this to family?" I listened to them once, then deleted them. I wasn't doing anything to them. I was simply doing nothing for them. There is a massive difference. 3 months later, I drove down to the seaside house again. It was late summer, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming jasmine and salt water. This time, there was no Porsche in the driveway. No thumping bass music. Just my dad's reliable sedan and a new, bright red bicycle leaning against the porch railing. I walked up the stairs, the same stairs that had been a crime scene of emotional abuse just 90 days ago. They were clean. Mom had placed pots of geraniums on every other step, bright bursts of pink and red that welcomed you instead of tripping you. I reached the door. The new biometric lock blinked at me. I didn't have to key in a code, the camera recognized my face. "Welcome home, Olivia," the automated voice chirped softly. It was a small detail, but I had programmed it specifically. I had also programmed it to say something else if it detected Jessica or Mark. I tested it once with a photo of them. The system simply says, "Access denied. Please leave the premises." I walked inside. The house felt completely different. It wasn't just the lack of mess. It was the energy. The tension that used to hum in the background of every family gathering, the worry about what Jessica would say, what Mark would break, how much it would cost, was gone. Mom was in the kitchen. She was humming. Actually humming. She was making a salad, chopping vegetables with a rhythm that matched the song on the radio. "Hey, Mom," I said, dropping my bag. She turned and beamed. She looked younger. The stress lines around her mouth had softened. She wasn't wearing her usual worn-out housecoat. She was wearing a nice linen dress I had sent her for her birthday. "Olivia. You're early." She rushed over and hugged me. She smelled like basil and expensive soap. "Dad is down on the beach. He says he's scouting for invaders, but I think he's just fishing." I walked out to the deck. My dad was standing at the edge of the water, casting a line into the surf. He stood straighter now. Maybe it was the Krav Maga, or maybe it was just the weight of the world being lifted off his shoulders. I joined him, kicking off my shoes to let the sand get between my toes. "Catch anything?" I asked. "Just peace of mind," he smiled, reeling in the line. "And maybe a little seaweed." We stood there for a moment, watching the sun dip low over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. It was the exact view I had imagined when I signed the check for this place. It just took a war to be able to enjoy it. "I heard from Mia," I said quietly. Dad stopped reeling. "Mia, my 16-year-old niece. Jessica's daughter. The one innocent bystander in all of this. Is she okay?" Dad asked. "She messaged me on Instagram," I said. "She said things are tough at home. Mark is working at a warehouse now, and Jessica is actually looking for a receptionist job. They had to move to a smaller apartment." Dad nodded, his face unreadable. "That's good. Work is good for them." "She asked if she could visit," I continued. "She said she misses Grandma and Grandpa. And she sent a picture of her report card. Straight A's." Dad looked at the house, then back at me. "She's not her parents, Olivia." "I know," I said. "I told her she can come. But only her. I told her I'd send a car for her, so Mark doesn't have an excuse to drive down here. And she stays in the guest room, and she follows the house rules." "Boundaries," Dad said, testing the word like a new flavor. "You set boundaries." "I did." "Good," he said. "We'd love to see her." Later that night, we sat on the deck again. The ocean sounded like a lullaby. We were drinking tea. Mom had sworn off wine for a while, saying it reminded her too much of the stain on the rug. I looked at them. My parents. They weren't the fragile, trembling victims I had found on the driveway that night. They were survivors. They were reclaiming their twilight years. I thought about the money I had spent. The $425,000 for the house. The thousands for the repairs. The legal fees. The years of paying for Jessica's bailouts. People always say you can't buy happiness. And they're right. I bought this house, and it brought misery at first. But you can buy safety. You can buy a lock that works. You can buy the distance you need to heal. You know, I said, breaking the silence. I used to think my job was to fix everything. To be the surgeon for this family. Cut out the pain, stitch up the wounds, pay the bills. Mom reached over and patted my knee. And now? Now I realize I'm not the surgeon here, I said. I'm just the security guard. I keep the bad stuff out so you guys can live your lives. The rest, the healing, that's up to you. Dad smiled. He raised his tea mug in a toast. To the security guard, he said. To the security guard, Mom echoed. We clinked mugs. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I didn't even look at it. It might have been the hospital. It might have been a friend. It might have been Jessica trying one last manipulation tactic. It didn't matter. The gate was locked. The cameras were on. My parents were safe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for the emergency. I was just present. I took a sip of tea and looked at the moon. It was full and bright, illuminating the path forward. It wasn't a path paved with guilt or obligation anymore. It was a path paved with self-respect. And let me tell you, the view from here is spectacular. Friends, thank you for listening to my story. We are taught that family is everything. We are taught that love means sacrifice. But there is a fine line between being a supportive family member and being an enabler. When we repeatedly shield people from the consequences of their actions, like I did with Jessica's car, her rent, and her mistakes, we aren't helping them. We are crippling them. We are robbing them of the chance to grow, to fail, and to learn resilience. I regained my power the moment I realized that my dignity was not up for negotiation. Now, I want to hear from you. If this story resonated with you, if you agree that boundaries are a form of love, please type good in the comments below. Or share your own suitcases on the stairs moment, the moment you finally said enough. I read every single comment. Your stories remind me that we are all in this together, learning to lock our doors to toxicity and open them to peace. Thank you for watching. Stay strong, set those boundaries, and remember, you hold the keys to your own life.